Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, a good evening to all of you. I am sure that most of us, if not all of us, are familiar with horror stories concerning the dangers of credit card use in the country. Among others, these stories include complaints made by credit card users regarding fraudulent transactions, exorbitant interest rates on outstanding balances, and late payment penalties charged to credit card holders even if the billing statements were delivered late, if at all, by the credit card companies. Merchants too have their share of these horror stories, particularly those whose transactions have been charged back to them for one reason or the other and without prior notice or consultation. Today, I stand before this august chamber in the effort to protect the rights and interests of millions of Filipino credit card holders and tens of thousands or so accredited merchants who, for reasons of market convention or competitive parity, are compelled to transact their business through credit card companies. Today, I seek the support of this august chamber in the pursuit of consumer protection and financial reform that, among others, will place a cap on the interest rates charged on deferred payments made on credit card purchases to 1% per month, strengthen the provisions of the Electronic Commerce Act to protect merchants against arbitrary chargebacks, and to promote accountability, responsibility, and disclosure in the credit card industry. Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, the use of electronic fund transfers to facilitate purchase transactions became popular bank products among the local consumers since the turn of the millennium. Those with poor credit ratings opted for prepaid debit cards for the security and convenience that it offers, while those with good credit standing found themselves deluged with offers to a surfeit of pre-approved credit cards with the promise of making all their consumer aspirations, quote and unquote, affordable the minute they activate the cards offered them. Today, the credit card industry consists of some 15 major credit card companies that process over 100 billion pesos worth of credit card transactions on an annual basis. They facilitate the transactions made by over 4 million credit card holders and 30,000 or more retail and service establishments nationwide. This industry, ladies and gentlemen, is not an insignificant segment of the Philippine economy, and neither are the transacting public an inconsequential part of our respective constituencies. The issues and concerns that are prevalent in the credit card industry not only merits congressional scrutiny, but also legislative attention. It is understood that the 6-year term of Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas Governor Amando M. Tetanco Jr. will expire on July 3, 2011. There are talks going around in the business community that he has been offered a second term in office, something that the country has not seen since the appointment of Central Bank Governor Jobo Fernandez to a second term by then President Corazon C. Aquino. Governor Tetanco, a career official with more than 30 years of experience in the Bangko Sentral tucked under his belt, has strengthened our banking system and provided stability to our economy. We have no debate on that. But just as important to this representation are the issues of consumer welfare and basic financial literacy, which are also the responsibility of the Bangko Sentral. We refer specifically to the credit card users whose rights have been largely ignored by credit card companies and entrepreneurs whose merchant accounts have been compromised by chargebacks unilaterally implemented by these same credit card companies. What then has Governor Tetanco done regarding these matters? We ask this question, Mr. Speaker, my esteemed colleagues, because of the feedback that we have received regarding the apparently unfair practices being implemented by credit card companies. They charge a penalty for late payments, according to one who spoke to us. But they slap the interest not only on the amount that you did not pay for the month, but also on any additional amounts you charge for the coming months. The reason that the credit card company gave was that as soon as anything new is charged, those new charges form part of the cardholder's unpaid amount. Worse than this, no one in the credit card company can explain to the cardholder how the penalty charges were computed. Another person suggested that we look into the methods and practices of collection agencies which border on outright terrorism and coercion, to the point of threatening to expose the extent of the cardholders' obligations to their neighbors and co-workers as a means to collect payment. The issue of reform in the credit card industry is no longer the exclusive purview of those in our society with an excess of disposable income. There are likewise a number of horror stories concerning the dangers of credit card use among OFWs, teachers, and office workers who could not afford the services of a legal counsel to help them fight for their rights against the abuse of credit card companies. Not all are like Ms. Ileana Macalinaw, who was able to secure a favorable decision from the Supreme Court against the excessive charges levied by a credit card company, which states, and I quote, "We need not unsettle the principle we had affirmed in a plethora of cases that stipulated interest rates of 3% per month and higher are excessive, iniquitous, unconscionable, and exorbitant. Such stipulations are void for being contrary to morals, if not against the law." While Central Bank Circular Number 905-82, which took effect on January 1, 1983, effectively removed the ceiling on interest rates for both secured and unsecured loans, regardless of maturity, nothing is said in the said circular could possibly be read as granting carte blanche authority to lenders to raise interest rates to levels which would either enslave their borrowers or lead to a hemorrhaging of their assets. Ladies and gentlemen, there are other similar decisions made by the Supreme Court on the matter of exorbitant tariffs charged by credit card companies. But it would seem that neither the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas nor the Monetary Board has enforced the jurisprudence laid out by our courts. Tayo po ba ay kakampi na lamang sa pagtapak ng mga dambuhalang kumpanya ng credit card at ang pagbubulag-bulagan ng Bangko Sentral sa sitwasyon ng mga credit card users? What about merchant chargebacks? A typical chargeback situation occurs when a cardholder refutes a transaction recorded in the statement of account, informs the credit card company that said purchase was not authorized, and subsequently requests that the transaction be charged back to the merchant. It is understood that upon receipt of said request, the standard operating procedure or SOP for the credit card company is to take the amount charged back to the merchant's bank account without need of any authorization from or prior notice to the merchant. If the merchant is sizable enough to maintain substantial sums in their bank account, then there should be no problem. However, if the merchant is relatively a smaller establishment, a significant chargeback may serve to clean out their bank account and compromise the clearing of their checks earlier issued to suppliers and business partners. Should there be insufficient funds in the merchant's bank account to cover the chargeback, the merchant stands to lose its accreditation and be blackballed by the credit card company by placing its name in the terminated merchant's file list, a negative list of merchant establishments that have breached the provisions of their memorandum of agreement with the credit card company. Inclusion in this list will preclude the said merchant from receiving credit card processing services in the future, unless, of course, the merchant can expeditiously settle the amount charged back in an alternative manner. The question that begs asking, Mr. Speaker, my esteemed colleagues, is this. In this era of increasing fraudulent credit card transactions, how many entrepreneurs and small to medium enterprises have been deleteriously affected by these unilateral chargebacks? How many have been forced to close shop because of these adverse industry practices? In January of 2004, the Bangko Sentral created the BSP Consumer Education Committee, whose mandate it is to address the financial literacy needs of consumers of financial products and services. In October of 2006, Governor Tetanco created the Financial Affairs Group under the supervision and examination sector of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas for purposes of ensuring the protection of depositors and investors and to guarantee the smooth and orderly functioning of the entire financial system. Why then are credit card holders and merchants left on their own to fight for what is just and fair? Have credit card holders been informed of the consequences of paying only the minimum amount due as stated in their statement of accounts? Are they aware of how the interest rates charged on their outstanding balances are computed? Were they informed that the late payment charges will not only be applied against their unpaid balances, but also to the purchases that they make until payment has been made? Have merchants, especially the small ones, been given the requisite financial literacy training by the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas? Have they in fact been informed of their liabilities or remedies on a chargeback situation? On the other side of the proverbial coin, Mr. Speaker, credit card companies should not only abide by the disclosures required by law, but also charge interest rates that are not exorbitant, excessive, and unconscionable. They should not interpret the Supreme Court's ruling on the Macalinaw case as being applicable only to the credit card company involved, but to the entire credit card industry. The Macalinaw ruling is a landmark jurisprudence that should set the direction for the entire credit card industry. Despite this, the Credit Card Association of the Philippines and the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas have yet to incorporate the ruling into their policies and procedures. The Credit Card Association quibbles about the Supreme Court's decision as being merely a ruling and not a law. But, Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, are not jurisprudence part and parcel of the law of the land? Is the regulator in this case being co-opted by the industry that it is supposed to regulate? The Credit Card Association of the Philippines places the blame on the consumers when it stated, and I quote, "If everyone paid their bills on time and used credit prudently, the card issuer's risk would be greatly reduced and rates would surely follow. Perhaps we don't need a new law as much as we need restraint and responsibility, unquote. Ang sisi po pala ay nasa mga credit card users. Sila na nga ang kinukulit ng mga face-to-face marketeers sa malls. Sila na nga ang kinukulit ng mga telemarketeers sa telepono at cellphone nila. At sila na mismo ang pinapadalhan ng SMS para kumuha at pumirma sa application forms ng mga credit card companies na ito. Sila pa pala ang may kasalanan. Hindi po ba nararapat na magdahan-dahan ang mga credit card companies na ito sa pagmumudmud ng kanilang applications forms sa kani-kanino na lang? At di po ba dapat ay nakasulat ang paraan ng pagkwenta ng interest rates sa balanse ng credit card na di binabayaran ng buo? Ang tanong ng inyong abang lingkod sa Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas at sa mga kasapi ng Credit Card Association of the Philippines ay ang mga sumusunod. Tama po ba ng isang menor de edad na 13 years old ay maging beneficiary ng isang supplemental card? Tama po ba na ang anunsyo o patalastas ay 3 hanggang 3.5% lang ang interest kada buwan, pero wala namang sinasabi tungkol sa katumbas nitong 42% kada taon? Tama po ba na hindi alam ng mga gumagamit ng credit card kung paano magkwenta ng interest nito? Sino nga ba ang dapat tumakda ng tamang pagkwenta? O kanya-kanya na lang kwentahan ang bawat credit card company? Tama po ba na mabubulaga na lang ang mga consumers sa 200 pisong monthly account maintenance fee ng isang credit card company sa mga card holders na may outstanding balance? Ito po ba ay may permiso ng Bangko Sentral? According to the records of the Bangko Sentral, credit card receivables as of the third quarter of 2010 amounted to some 134 billion pesos. Even if the 12% loss ratio is deducted from this amount and the average 3.5% interest rate is applied to the remainder, credit card companies still rake in a minimum of 458 million pesos a month in interest income alone, without the other fees, charges, and penalties, which even this representation is at a loss to explain, because again, it all boils down to what formula is being applied. The credit card business, therefore, Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, is not a losing compromise. It is not a losing proposition. The industry cannot only live off the usurious rates that they charge the unwary card holders, but also make a hefty profit from it. Apparently, the Bangko Sentral does not see a market failure here and cautions those pushing for an interest rate cap as creating unintended consequences. The BSP governor was even quoted as saying, "An environment where there is more competition to naturally temper prices and improve services is the solution to curb the excesses of credit card issuers." So, Mr. Governor, who then shall moderate the greed of credit card companies? Or are you saying greed is good, as a certain Gordon Gekko once said? Without Bangko Sentral intervention, the same rules will prevail for good and bad credit card users, with the prime users covering the default of the subprime users. Without intervention, compounded interests and penalty rates can skyrocket to 42% per annum due to deferred or late payments, even if the proximate cause was the failure of the card companies to deliver the billing statement on time or failure of other banks to post the payment on time. Without intervention, chargebacks based on fraudulent credit card purchases will be par for the course. Ladies and gentlemen, a board member in my home province of Cagayan recently narrated her experiences regarding the use of her credit card to me. She purchased an airline ticket online and charged it to her credit card with the understanding that if the flight was canceled, the funds will automatically be credited back to her account. In her case, the flight was indeed canceled, but instead of an automatic credit, she needed to make a claim and fill out numerous forms before she could get a refund, which she did after several months of following it up. She also availed of the auto-debit payment facility of her credit card. It was a good thing that she conscientiously reviews her statement of account. Otherwise, she would not have discovered the other charges and fees that were included in the auto-debit facility that she was not made aware of or was otherwise not disclosed to her. There was even a time when she did not receive her statement of account for months on end, but was nonetheless charged for late payment fees by the credit card company. In the Philippine Star column of Mr. Jarius Bondoc dated September 22, 2010, credit card holders shared their collective horror stories. People who were clamoring to know their rights as credit card holders who have been charged exorbitant interest fees on their outstanding balances, and even those who paid more than double the value of their purchases due to the accumulated late charges. Reports came out last Friday, January 28, 2011, that BSP Governor Tetanco has accepted the second-term offer of the President. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues, may I ask the Bangko Sentral, what is the real honest-to-goodness formula in computing interest rates on credit? As policymakers, we should know this so we can initiate our own financial literacy campaign rather than rely on Bangko Sentral. Si Juan de la Cruz ng Cagayan, ng Pangasinan, ng Cebu, ng Davao, at iba pang lugar ay di kilala si Governor Tetanco. Alam po naman natin na kapag pumunta ang ordinaryong mamamayan sa Bangko Sentral, walang haharap sa kanila upang sila ay tulungan kung di nila alam ang pasikot-sikot doon. Belatedly as it did, I understand that the Bangko Sentral issued Circular number 702 last December 15, 2011. Under the new guidelines, the issuance of pre-approved credit cards will no longer be allowed. Credit card companies are now mandated to inform cardholders in writing 7 days before their account may be endorsed to collection agencies. Likewise, disclosure requirements have also been expanded to require the printing of a table of applicable fees, penalties, and interest rates on credit card transactions using easily readable font sizes. In another media offensive, BSP came out with an advisory in the Philippine Star last January 25, 2011 on collection practices considered unfair. So now I ask, Mr. Speaker, my colleagues, if the banks persist with their ways, are there sanctions? Mr. Governor, are the banks meted out penalties for every violation they make? In fine, Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, it is imperative that we bring this information to our constituents. Information is power, and right now, it is all tilted in favor of banks. Pushing such reforms in the credit card industry is not new. In May 22, 2009, the U.S. Congress passed their Credit Card Accountability, Responsibility, and Disclosure Act of 2009. It limits when issuers of consumer credit cards can increase interest rates and bans billing and payment practices that are unfair and deceptive. We believe that the time is ripe for such a legislation to be enacted in this House of Representatives. Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, let us assist our entrepreneurs and give them the financial breathing space they need when it comes to friendly chargebacks. Let us mitigate the losses incurred in transactions using fraudulent credit cards by promoting a shared risk concept, if not totally limit the risk of chargebacks to credit card companies as to the process and authorize credit card transactions themselves. Let us join hands in this effort if we are to build a nation of fiscally responsible citizenry who are well informed to better manage their financial resources. Let us create an environment where socially responsible credit card companies may flourish and not those solely focused on the gecko dogma of greed. The fact that the BSP acted is already proof of market failure. Therefore, let us cap interest rates to 1% per month. Let us help our consumers, entrepreneurs, and small merchants by insisting that the Bangko Sentral ensure and promote accountability, responsibility, and disclosure in the banking and credit card industry. Governor Tetanco, the Supreme Court has been consistent. Interest rates of 3% per month or higher are excessive, iniquitous, unconscionable, and exorbitant. Greed is not good, Mr. Governor.